I get it. I want my MTV. Motion to vacate, that is. Gaetz is fundraising. Gaetz is running for governor of Florida. It doesn't matter if McCarthy says bring it on and Gaetz says I just did, or the other way round. Hours before he filed the motion last night to oust McCarthy, Gaetz's father came out of retirement so he can run for the Florida Senate again. It's a stunt. It doesn't matter which Russian Republican runs their spit show. The point is, Jack Smith is goddamn serious about the gag order. The country is goddamn serious about disqualifying Trump under the 14th Amendment, and it's polling surprisingly well. And Trump inadvertently confessed, and Trump said he'd rather be electrocuted than eaten by sharks, so I have one simple request, and that is to have sharks with frickin' laser beams attached to their heads. Throw me a bone here. I will go through all that, especially the inadvertent confession, which is mind-boggling presently. But newest story first, and our strongest defense against Trump and for democracy remains not our own efforts to preserve it, but the stupidity of those who would destroy it. Specifically, the stupidity of Donald freaking laser beams Trump.
We're not entitled to a jury, which is pretty unusual in the United States of America, so we think it's very unfair that I don't have a jury.
Trump didn't get a jury at his New York fraud trial because his lawyers didn't ask for a jury at his New York fraud trial. Alina Habba, the Trump, I'm not a lawyer, but I play one on TV spokesmodel, who sat next to him at the defense table and looked like she had never seen a table before, let alone the inside of a courtroom. Last night, she repeatedly denied that she and Trump's other call 1-800-5-million-injury attorneys screwed it up. And obviously she would do that. And the crowd she was talking to was not likely to ever hear that the source for the Trump forgot to ask for a jury story was Judge Arthur Engoron, who said that in court, that nobody asked for a jury. Trump was smart enough also to make another threat, this time on tape, this time with the authenticity of his blind, moronic rage against the Attorney General and the judge who's judging the case by himself.
Now I have to go before a rogue judge as a continuation of Russia, 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 as a continuation of the greatest witch hunt of all time, and I don't think the people of this country are going to stand for it. This is a disgrace, and you ought to go after this Attorney General.
Trump is an idiot when there is rage involved, the rage element. And Trump actually only has something akin to human emotion when it comes to money, his money. This should be a reminder to anybody debating him or preparing somebody else to debate him or interviewing him to get him angry. Because then when he's angry, he says not just stupid things, but stupid, self-incriminating things.
It's a scam, it's a sham.
It's a scam, it's a sham, it's a scam, it's a sham. Reminds me of something.
Hi, it's Vince with Sham Wow. You'll be saying wow every time you use this towel.
Because you know I can't do this all day. What's the value of the New York trial? Well, it's simple. This genuinely enrages him. The money genuinely enrages him. And everything that breaks him financially breaks him psychologically. As much damage as possible. As many blows to the head, the body, wherever as possible. Keep hitting him. The Muhammad Ali theory. Keep hitting him. Apropos of the financial stuff, the new Michael Lewis book on Sam Bankman-Fried says the crypto con man claims he approached Trump's camp with an offer of cash if Trump would agree not to run in 2024. $5 billion. Makes me hate Sam Bankman-Fried a little less and at the same time a little more. It also would have encouraged Trump to do this again in 2028 for another $5 billion, and it would have opened up a new market. Hell, $5 billion. I won't run for president for $500. A late story of note out of CNN. All the anonymous stories attributed to General John Kelly, one of Trump's chiefs of staff, they're not anonymous anymore. He confirmed them on the record. 5 years too late, but he confirmed them. Insulting McCain, calling American war dead at Belleau Wood suckers, telling Milley to keep the wounded veterans away from him. Kelly concludes, there's nothing more that can be said. God help us, unquote. Yeah, God help you, pal. You could have said something in real time to help stop this. Now, to the issues of import I teased earlier. Judge Chutkan will convene a hearing on October 16th, 2 weeks from yesterday, on the Jack Smith gag order request, and Smith is even more damned serious about it than I had dreamed. His late-night answer to Trump's late-night answer pointed out that the newest threats Trump made, the post about the death penalty for what Trump considered treason, were not directed at General Milley. They were directed at other potential witnesses who might want to avoid those kinds of threats, let alone anything more serious. Moreover, the special counsel's office noted it does not really matter whether Trump did or did not buy a Lugar at a white supremacist gun shop in South Carolina. A purchase would obviously be a violation of his bail, and there would be no way for the judge not to revoke the bail and not to put him behind bars until the trial starts. But the other option was also an abuse of the terms under which Chutkan did not end Trump's freedom in the first place. Quoting the Smith retort, the defendant either purchased a gun in violation of the law and his conditions, or seeks to benefit from his supporters' mistaken belief that he did so. Even lying about Trump buying a gun is a way in which Trump has exploited the absence of a gag order and allowed himself to remind his cult and potential witnesses that he is a man dedicated to personal violence and the fomenting of civil violence. Quote, no other criminal defendant would have been permitted to issue public statements insinuating that a known witness in his case should be executed. This defendant should not be either. As a side note to that, they are thus confirming Mark Milley is at least on the witness list. Special counsel also went out of its way to go after one of Trump's subtler but more consistent tricks, repeatedly recasting the charges in his own favor or flat out lying about what the charges are and what they mean. Quote, the indictment does in fact clearly link the defendant and his actions to the events of January 6. In short, the indictment alleges that the defendant's actions, including his campaign of knowingly false claims of election fraud, led to the events of January 6, unquote. Jack Smith wants Chutkan to not just speed up the trial start as punishment for all this. He wants her to circumscribe Trump's ability to write or say whatever he wants just because he's running for office. He wants a gag order of some width and breadth. And if she imposes it on Trump, you know Trump will violate it. He has to. Anything less than violating it, anything that says he is giving in to the judge and he breaks the spell over the victims in his world record length shell game. And I'll ask this again, and I'll keep asking it. What happens when he breaks it? When he breaks the gag order for the 4th time or the 5th time or the 45th time, and Chutkan finally says enough and revokes his bail, whether that's next month or next year, what happens then? We reenact the gunfight at the OK Corral? On another front in the war against Trump and for democracy, Politico polled on the 14th Amendment, and I hope every news editor in this country read the story and we can stop the political media industrial complex conventional wisdom that continues to insist that disqualifying Trump under the insurrection clause is a non-starter, a fringe theory, as I've heard it repeatedly described. The Beltway reporters consider it that because they consider everything they have not actually seen happen before, everything they cannot shove into one of the 12 or 13 cubbyhole story templates that they can process and understand. They consider the rest of the universe fringe theory. Politico asked specifically, based on how he behaved after the 2020 election, does the 14th Amendment prohibit Trump from ever again running for office? And 51% said yes. 34% said no. 15% undecided. The undecideds are not all breaking for no. The 14th Amendment is a factor in the 2024 campaign, and the media and the state's secretaries of state damn well better start treating it that way. Oh, and generically, the 14th Amendment is doing even better. Before introducing Trump's name into the equation, the Politico pollsters asked if the respondents, quote, support or oppose the disqualification clause in the 14th Amendment, and they read it to them, and 63% said they strongly or somewhat support it. And only 16% said they did not, meaning there is 12% of that undecided 15% from the Trump question who agree that the 14th Amendment applies, is legit, is not just about the Civil War, but matters today. 12% of the undecided 15% agree with it in theory. They just have to be convinced Trump is guilty of the violations it cites. That 12% is nearly halfway towards supporting disqualifying Trump under the 14th Amendment. We cannot push that pedal too hard. Of course, he may beat everybody to disqualifying himself. As I said, Trump has inadvertently confessed. Quote, will Congressman Jamal Bowman be prosecuted and imprisoned? He posted about the door alarm skirmish. In order to stop a congressional vote that was going on in D.C., his egregious act is covered on tape, a horrible display of nerve and criminality. It was a very dangerous obstruction of an official proceeding. When will his trial begin? This, of course, is as close as Trump can actually get to trolling. And he's not human enough to realize that a key object in trolling is not to confess to the crimes you are accusing the others of. In order to stop a congressional vote, well, yes, Trump did that. Act is covered on tape. Well, yeah, there's tape of Trump doing that. Nerve and criminality. Well, yes, Trump did both of those things. Obstruction of an official proceeding that was very dangerous. This is Trump acknowledging that the charges against him are legit, as surely as those poll respondents are acknowledging that the 14th Amendment applies. And then lastly, the latest sign that Trump's cheese whiz is sliding off his Ritz cracker. This is about, believe it or not, alternative fuel vehicles. In this case, boats. Or at least it started there. Come on over for Trump explaining how he would prefer to die, and then stay for the little Freudian slip.
If I'm sitting down and that boat's going down and I'm on top of a battery and the water starts flooding in, I'm getting concerned. But then I look 10 yards to my left and there's a shark over there. So I have a choice of electrocution or shark. You know what I'm going to take? Electrocution. I will take electrocution every single time. Do we agree? Yeah, I will take electrocution.
He will take electrocution. Actually, he said, and it's been dismissed as slurred speech, and it really isn't that, is it? He said elects rocution. Dr. Freud elects rocution. Still on the premise of it, no sharks. He'd rather die by electrocution. To which I say, you have a deal. Also of interest here, Fox News is crushed by the new senator designate from California because they had their money on, no, you will not believe who they thought Gavin Newsom was going to appoint to replace the late Dianne Feinstein. But I am betting that you will guess which congressman announced that the appointment is unconstitutional by citing an article in the Constitution that does not exist. Which congressman would quote a fictitious article? That's next. This is Countdown.
This is Countdown with Keith Olbermann.
Still ahead on Countdown Sports and the death of Tim Wakefield and the firing of Buck Showalter and Phil Nevin and the 45th anniversary of Bucky effing Dent, including my report from the game. This just in. First time for the daily roundup of the miscreants, morons, and Dunning-Kruger effect specimens who constitute today's worst persons in the world. The bronze, Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders of Arkansas. It's impossible to believe that you could get yourself caught in a scandal by spending $19,000 of taxpayer money on a podium and then not just take the humiliation and the laughter and move on. Trump's former liar-in-chief keeps making it worse somehow. First, it turned out she bought it from a company that was not based in Arkansas. Now the investigative reporter who broke the story says Huckabee ordered a State Department to not comply with his Freedom of Information Act request and had somebody alter the request, doctor the guy's FOIA form. This was a $19,000 podium scandal. Now it is a $19,000 podium scandal that could cost Governor Lady Huck her governorship. Etude. The runner-up, you may have heard that Governor Newsom of California has appointed the activist LaFonza Butler to succeed the late Senator Dianne Feinstein. Congressman George Santos of New York, the human lie factory, still supported by every Republican, is not happy that the new senator had been working in Maryland, so he tweeted his gotcha. Quote, "There is this annoying thing Dems hate called the Constitution. Article 5, Section 3 stated, every member of the Senate shall be at the time of his election a resident of the state from which he shall be chosen." Cool. George, there is no Section 3 of Article 5 of the Constitution. George made that up. But our winner, Fox ninny Rachel Campos Duffy. Talk about making stuff up. She co-hosts the Kids Table at Fox and Friends, the weekend edition. She got her start on MTV's Real World Stupid City, Arizona. Senator-designate Butler means that Ms. Campos' Duffy's reporting on the appointment was incorrect. Saturday and Sunday, she went on Fox and announced that sources had told her that the new senator from California, since Newsom had said it would be a black woman, was likely to be, you ready? Meghan Markle. Nah, I'm not kidding. She claimed Meghan Markle had campaigned for the post, had called Jill Biden to arrange it, and Ms. Campos Duffy did a victory lap when the ever-reliable Daily Mail of London reported a rumor about it. Fox's Rachel Campos Duffy. I may be mispronouncing that. It may be Rachel Campos Doofy. Today's worst person in the world!
This is Sports Center. Wait, check that. Not anymore. This is Countdown with Keith Olbermann.
In sports, you will recall that Curt Schilling, scumbag ex-pitcher of the Boston Red Sox, made the worst persons list last Friday. He broke a confidence and revealed that his former teammate Tim Wakefield and his wife were battling cancer. He even acknowledged that he did not know whether the Wakefields wanted that fact known. He put it on his podcast. Anyway, Sunday, Tim Wakefield died. Brain cancer. The baseball world is stricken and in mourning. Anybody else who did what Schilling did would retire from all public life and maybe change his name and try to repent. Not Schilling, because he barely qualifies as a human being. I hope his maker can forgive him. The rest of us never, ever will. The day after the New York Mets fired manager Buck Showalter, the Los Angeles Angels fired manager Phil Nevin. I know it doesn't say that in the news media. It says one of them parted ways and the other one didn't have his option renewed. But when the general manager of the Mets tells you you have your choice of resigning or being fired, you've been fired. Or when the general manager of the Angels says, they're not picking up your option, you've been fired. The option thing, I've been there. As to the Mets, this better be a precursor to letting Shohei Ohtani pick his own manager as part of the Mets' offer to him, or owner Steve Cohen has made a huge mistake. Can Ohtani's translator manage? Anybody know? The premise is the team's new head of baseball operations, David Stearns, gets to choose his own baseball people. Now, if I'm general manager Billy Epler, who told Showalter he was out, I'm thinking, wait, I'm in baseball, and I'm a people. Am I going to get fired too? Wait, what's that odd look on Billy's face? Thank you, Nancy Faust. My favorite Buck Showalter memory coming up in Things I Promise Not to Tell. I'd love to give you a full baseball playoff preview, but frankly, I don't care. The baseball postseason used to be the matchup between the champions of the American and National Leagues in the World Series. The regular seasons had determined the top two teams, with rare exceptions, and then they fought for the championship. That was the point of the season. An increase in teams necessarily meant an increase in playoff teams. I happily embrace that. Division winners. This is a joke. The wild card teams in the National League are all terribly flawed, pretenders, and one of them could, like last year, get hot for a couple of weeks and get into the World Series, not being one of the best teams in baseball, and then get humiliated as the Philadelphia Phillies did. I've expounded on this before. There are many reasons the TV audience for each World Series game dropped from 43 million a night in 1980 to 15 million a night last year. But one of the reasons is this: we cannot have any confidence that those will be the two best teams in the game. It's just a tournament now, like basketball. If it's not your team involved, why would you watch? At the risk of being one of those, hey, you kids, get off my etc. guys, 45 years ago, the two best teams in the American League spent 162 games beating each other's brains in and tied over 162 games, and then had to meet in a one-game playoff. The winner went on to the American League Championship Series. The loser went home. It was the Bucky Dent game. Red Sox-Yankees, October 2, 1978, and before the anniversary slips back further into obscurity, I was there and on the air from there.
Bucky Dent has, with just surprise out of the blue to everybody here, hit a three-run home run over the left field wall at Fenway Park. You see, the Green Monster plays no favorites, as they say, and the Yankees have just added a fourth run on a base hit by Thurman Munson that scored Mickey Rivers from second. He had gotten there on a walk and a stolen base his second of the game. I have to tell you something about Dent's home run.
I saw it, Keith.
No, you didn't hear this. Now, you know I'm sitting here with Jim Berger, who is a member of our staff. The Red Sox just got the Yankees out on a fly ball to left.
Right.
Jim Berger is a member of our staff and a Red Sox fan, turns to me with Dent up and two men on and says, well, at least he's not a home run threat. And I said, thank you for saying that. And promptly he hit the home run over the left field wall.
Yeah, well, it just made it over. I saw the replay on television, and the ball was going down, and it almost hit the top of the wall. Just missed the top of the wall and made it into the...
What is that? That's known as the Bernie Carbo special, as I remember it.
Well, Bernie Carbo isn't on the Yankees or the Red Sox now, so we'll leave him out of it.
That was the sort of thing he used to hit.
Okay. Well, Keith, your Yankees are up 4-2. We're in bottom of the seventh.
And I have to tell you something else.
Okay.
Looking at the respective earned run averages of the pitchers who were starting this game before the game started, Jim Berger, our ace Red Sox fan on the sports staff, said this figures to be a 4-2 game. So far he is 100% correct and wishes he were it.
Okay, I'll talk to you a little later, okay, Keith?
All right, when the game's over, Craig.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Some notes, and yes, the host there was a Red Sox fan too. Bucky Dent rightly notes that if the Yankees had not fired Billy Martin as their manager 3 months before that game, he would not have even come to the plate then, let alone hit that game-leading home run that eventually put the Yankees over the Red Sox into the playoffs. Martin had pinch hit for Bucky Dent 5 times in 7 games at Fenway Park, Boston in 1977 alone. He had pinch hit for him 8 times overall in Dent's first 63 games in 1978. Then he got fired. His successor, Bob Lemon, did not pinch hit for Bucky Dent. And back then, Eastern Airlines, flying out of LaGuardia Airport in New York, guaranteed you a seat on its hourly shuttle flight to Boston if you got to the gate on time. It's about 120 people maybe per plane. For the 9 a.m. to Boston on October 2nd, 1978, there were about 128 people at the gate. So sure enough, they rolled out a second plane for the remaining 8 of us. Among them, Dick Schaap, the sportscaster, his 9-year-old son Jeremy, now an ESPN sportscaster, American League President Lee MacPhail, and me, 19-year-old Yankee fan, meeting up with my 2 friends, the Red Sox fans who had gone to Boston that weekend and had bought all of us tickets to that playoff game. The Yankees would win 52 of their last 73 games that season, while the Red Sox were just 1 game over 500 in their final 73. In Fenway, in September, where the Yankees had lost 13 of their 16 previous games, New York had swept 4 from Boston by a combined score of 42-9. And 4.5 decades later, members of the 78 Yankees will still insist that August 9th was as important as any other day of that year. Pre-internet, pre-ESPN, pre-talk radio, the New York newspapers were the dominant media, and the ones then made the ones today look like a stack of Valentine's Day cards. On August 9th, 1978, all of the New York newspapers were shut down by a strike that lasted until November. And the Yankee players basically didn't have to answer a question, snide, tough, or otherwise, again, until spring training. I was told back then that several of the players proposed making a donation to the newspaper strike fund as part of their winnings from winning the World Series out of pure gratitude. Finally, to our number 1 story on the countdown and my favorite topic, me and things I promised not to tell. The New York Yankees were in their first pennant race in 5 years. They had reeled off 8 wins in 10 games to reach a first-place tie with the defending world champion Toronto Blue Jays. It was Sunday, August 22nd, 1993, and I was at Yankee Stadium just 'cause we were about to start a month of intensive preparations for the launch of the ill-fated ESPN2. Good evening and welcome to the end of our careers. That one. And this was probably going to be my last chance to go to the city, visit my folks, see a ball game, whatever, till further notice. And here was my childhood team, the Yankees, with a lineup that now included friends of mine, like Danny Tartabull and Mike Gallego and Don Mattingly, against the Royals, for whom my friends Wally Joyner and David Cohn played, and a seat awaiting me in the press box on a beautiful late summer Sunday afternoon with just the earliest hint of fall in the air and Bobby Darin singing on the PA system. And the Yankees got crushed. Kansas City started a pitcher named Chris Haney, who was much less successful than his mediocre 5.47 ERA implied. He would somehow last for 11 seasons and become statistically one of the worst pitchers of a generation. And that day, the Yankees got at least 1 base runner on in 8 of the 9 innings against Chris Haney, and he still shut them out 7-0. And you could sense right then that whatever it was that a team needed to have to hold its own down the stretch, the 1993 New York Yankees did not have it. Still, it was fun to visit with reporter friends, some of whom I'd known since I'd broken in 14 years earlier, and some I hadn't seen since then. The only oddity was that at some point during the game, one of the kids from the Yankees media relations department came over and asked me for my ID. And when I showed him my ID, he asked me if I was planning to go into the Yankee clubhouse afterwards. I said, funny you should ask that. I am headed downtown for dinner, but I missed my friend Danny Tartabull before the game for some reason, and I just want to pop in and say hello. And the kid said, thanks, sorry to trouble you, and he left. And the radio reporter I was sitting next to, Don Gould, said that was one of the strangest things he had seen in that press box, and he added, and nowadays all you see up here is strange things. As the Yankees went out limply in the ninth, leaving Bernie Williams stranded on first, naturally, I waited until all the reporters with real deadlines had taken the first couple of elevator trips down to the Yankee clubhouse in the basement, and then I leisurely made my way downstairs. I navigated the catacombs of the stadium basement as I had since it had opened in 1976, and felt warm and nostalgic and at peace. I showed my pass to the guard at the clubhouse door and walked into the clubhouse to find the Yankee clubhouse lacking the one thing it had literally always featured in each of the dozens and dozens of times I'd previously entered it since I was 17 years old. Players. There were no Yankee players in the Yankee clubhouse. No Yankees. No Yankees still in uniform. No Yankees half-dressed. No Yankees not dressed. No sounds of other Yankees in the showers off to the left. Nothing. Well, that wasn't quite right. I realized something after about a minute of walking slowly from locker to locker, thinking, isn't this where they used to be? Maybe Mattingly is crouching out of sight over here, and maybe Tartable is hiding behind his suit after that 0 for 3. I realized that while there were no Yankees in the Yankee clubhouse, there were reporters in the Yankee clubhouse, and they were all staring at me and angrily staring at me. I said to them, might have been my friend from upstairs, Don Gould, what the hell's going on? And he said testily, I don't know. Why don't you tell us? The reporters around him, who had never taken their eyes off me, now murmured quietly, but with a subtext of threat and menace and vengeance in their indistinct gurgling. Just at this point, Arthur Richmond, who had been the Mets public relations man forever and was now a Yankees vice president of something for some reason, and more importantly was the surviving brother of the great baseball reporter Milt Richmond, who had so helped me at the start of my career at UPI. Arthur tapped me on the shoulder and said, "You're Keith Olbermann, right?" And I said, "Yes, we've met before. I used to work with your brother." And he did not look happily at me. And I asked him if he wanted to see my pass or my ID or my identifying birthmarks. Arthur did not smile. "The manager would like to see you in his office." I still didn't have the faintest idea what was going on. "Have I been sent down to the minors, Arthur?" I asked jauntily. Yes, you have," Richmond answered with utter seriousness. Arthur Richmond escorted me to the little room on the home plate side of the clubhouse in which I had once seen the late Billy Martin shout at a coach, 2 pitchers, 3 writers, and a clubhouse attendant who had been with the team since 1927. The current occupant of that tiny office, the manager, rose from his desk. "Keith, hi, Buck Showalter. I'm the manager here." I reminded him that we had done a lengthy interview for ESPN Radio the year before. "That's right, I'd forgotten. I apologize. Listen, I wanted to tell you, I think you've brought something refreshing and fun to SportsCenter. I watch you all the time, especially when we're on the road. You know the game, too. That's important. But I have to tell you, my players have a problem with what you do." I wasn't that surprised. Players were like that. In 1993, very few sportscasters said anything negative about players. They certainly did not make jokes or puns about them. "I saw you on the field before the game, and I heard some of our guys," Showalter continued, like Paul O'Neill and Wade Boggs and Joe Girardi, they were talking about how they were thinking about going out there on the field and punching you in the head. I flashed back suddenly to 1989 when Boggs went on Geraldo Rivera's show and announced he was a sex addict, and how after checking with a few of his Red Sox teammates whom I knew from the year I worked in Boston who said that was nonsense, I went on the air on my sportscast on a local station in L.A., having intercut Boggs's weepy comments to Geraldo with the music video from Robert Palmer's Addicted to Love. I have to say, it was pretty funny, and also might have been the meanest thing I ever did on TV. Boggs wanted to punch me in the head on the field at Yankee Stadium? That checked out. "Go on," I said to Buck Showalter. In fact, the players are all staying in the training room in the back until they've been assured you've left the clubhouse and you won't be returning. They voted unanimously. I thought about this. When did they vote unanimously? While they were getting shut out by the worst pitcher of a generation? That did not check out. Now, like I said, personally, I like what you do, but I think you may want to consider the implications of what not having any access to players ever again will have on your career, especially on such a high-profile program as SportsCenter. I thought about it briefly, and I smiled at Buck Showalter. None whatsoever, actually. I'm a studio guy. I never have to go to games, and more to the point, I've just left SportsCenter for this new ESPN2 network because my boss has said it's basically going to be a network that's designed around my sense of humor. Buck Showalter was 37 years old then, and at the end of his second year as a Major League manager, his team, having just achieved a tie for first place, had just gotten the air let out of its balloon by an epically bad pitcher on a not-so-good team. Plus, they were due on a flight for Chicago, and the bus was supposed to leave in an hour. But Paul O'Neill, Wade Boggs, and Joe Girardi were worried about some dumb sportscaster making jokes. I knew they were doomed. And if manager Buck Showalter actually let Paul O'Neill, Wade Boggs, and Joe Girardi worry about some dumb sportscaster and his jokes, Buck Showalter, too, was doomed. And sure enough, they would lose 20 of their last 37 games after that day and not make the playoffs for 2 years and not actually get anywhere in the playoffs until after Showalter was fired and replaced by my friend Joe Torre. Right around then, after the firing, I was part of the annual ESPN Awards show, the ESPYs. It was the post-ESPYs party, and I went to get a drink and turned a corner, and there coming toward me were Paul O'Neill, Wade Boggs, and Joe Girardi. I was just about to gulp when O'Neill shouted, "There he is, our favorite ESPN guy." Handshakes. All of them. Girardi said he was amazed. Every time I ripped a player, he said it was somebody he also didn't like. How did I know? Boggs said, "Somebody told me that you put my Geraldo appearance into that Robert Palmer song. If you got a tape of that, I'd like to see it." I told them the Buck Showalter story immediately. "Oh, God, I remember that," said O'Neill. "He was pissed you were in the ballpark and we got shut out, and he made us stay in the trainer's room and not come out till after you left, and God, it was terrible." The smile vanished from Joe Girardi's face. Buck did stuff like that all the time. We should all have a drink and talk about it. We all had a drink and we talked about it. Years later, I was telling my late friend Pedro Gomez of ESPN the story, and he said Showalter used to do this to him when Showalter was managing the Arizona Diamondbacks and Pedro was a beat reporter for a newspaper in Phoenix. "You know, Colburn wants to beat you up, but I stopped him," he quoted Showalter as saying. Greg Colburn was a 6-foot, 190-pound weightlifter from California's Inland Empire who seemed to play baseball in his spare time. "So," Pedro said, "I confronted him one day and he said, 'Dude, what are you talking about? You know Buck just makes this crap up.'" The Yankees fired Buck Showalter in 1995, as I mentioned, and won the World Series in 1996. The Diamondbacks fired him in 2000 and won the World Series in 2001. Then he went to work in, of all places, the studio at ESPN for 2 years. Then he got another managing job in Texas, got fired from there, went back to ESPN for 3 more years, and then became the manager at Baltimore in 2010. I was at the Baltimore spring training camp one day, that March, and I see walking toward me from the other side of the field, trying to capture my attention, Buck Showalter. I am now 51 years old. He is now 53 years old. It is nearly 17 years since the day he locked his entire team in the trainer's room in the middle of a pennant race in a complicated ritual that would have been too labyrinthine a plot for Tom Clancy just to express some cheesy grudge against the way I did sportscasts. "Hey," Showalter said when he finally reached me, "when I pulled that stunt on you at Yankee Stadium, was that 93 or 94? We shook hands as I laughed, and I told him it was August of 1993. I can get you the exact date if you need it. I'm sorry, I had not been in television yet. I didn't get any of it. I just thought you guys came in and shouted your heads off and then went home. I didn't get it, obviously. Why didn't you tell me off or something?" he asked. I shrugged. I said, "Well, there was you, there were 6 coaches, 25 players there versus me, plus all the reporters who were angry at me who were on deadline. What if you were telling the truth?" Now, Buck laughed and apologized again. "We have been professional friends ever since. Whenever I have seen him, we compare the cruelties of aging and talk about politics and television. I saw him 2 Saturdays ago. After 4 more years in TV, when it looked like his managing career might be over, he is back running the New York Mets at the age of 66 and doing a damn fine job of it. And every once in a while, I bring up the trainer's room full of Yankees, and he flinches and says, you know, there's one last thing about it that now I cannot possibly understand. That trainer's room, that was really tiny. How did the players all fit in there? I've done all the damage I can do here. Thank you for listening. Countdown has come to you from the Vin Scully Studios at the Olbermann Broadcasting Empire in New York. The music you've heard was for the most part arranged, produced, and performed by Countdown musical directors Brian Ray and John Philip Chanel. Brian Ray handled the guitars, bass, and drums. John Philip Chanel did the orchestration and keyboards. And it was produced by TKO Brothers. Other music, including other Beethoven tunes, were arranged and performed by the group No Horns Allowed. Sports music is courtesy of ESPN Inc. It was written by Mitch Warren Davis. We call it the Olbermann theme from ESPN2. Our satirical and pithy musical comments are from Nancy Faust, the best baseball stadium organist ever. Our announcer today was my friend Larry David, and everything else was pretty much my fault. So that's Countdown for this, the 1,000th day since Donald Trump's first attempted coup against the democratically elected government of the United States. Convict him now while we still can. All right, it's at 1,001st day if you count today. The next scheduled countdown is tomorrow. Bulletins as the news warrants. Till then, I'm Keith Olbermann. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, and good luck.
Electrocution is a scam, it's a sham.
Hi, it's Vince with ShamWow.